Today we have three victims' encounters with romance scammers. Story number one. It started in 2017 when I started talking to Brad. I complimented him on being such a caring father. He responded back, and so it begins. It was innocent at first. I just wanted to be friends. Well, one thing led to another, and since I was new to this whole online chatting thing, I never suspected anything. We talked every day. He said he was in charge of an oil rig, and he was going to be out in the Gulf drilling. So he'd been there now for 3 months, and me, not knowing about iTunes or what they were even for, he said that he needed them to stay in contact, so I agreed. I lost track on how many iTunes cards I had sent over the year and a half that we talked, but then he called, and he sounded so sincere. He also sounded so upset, and being me, I listened. He said his drill broke and he couldn't finish his contract and that he had paid $20,000 down on a replacement from a trust account from his late wife, who, of course, died in a car accident. And he needed $5,000 more to fix the drill and complete the contract. Not knowing any better, I managed to come up with $3,000. I transferred from my bank account to the so-called petroleum account, which had the drill. Then, he said he still needed $2,000 more. The money I sent was all here to people in the States, from Florida, Texas, and Chicago, where he supposedly lived. Someone emailed me saying that he was a fraud and a thief and that he had taken her for over $20,000. She was a widow like me and had 3 children, the same as me. And before I invest any more money, I needed to check this man out. Did I listen? No. I confronted him about it, he denied it, and he swore, quote, on his late wife's grave, that he'd never did that and never heard of that person who sent me the email warning me about him. A bell went off, but just a little one, and I didn't mention it to him again. By now I was so in love with him I didn't want to believe anything negative about him. He said all the right things. I added you to my bank account. I love you. I was his wife, and so appreciative of me, and so on. This went on for another year. I would send money through Western Union. Although I was finally getting suspicious, I still supplied those stupid iTunes cards. An employee at the store where I was getting them told me, "You know, these iTunes cards are for music and movies, not for airtime on a phone." I replied, "No, that's not what my friend said." The employee said, "Yes, that's all they're good for." Another red flag that I choose to ignore. I don't really know what finally convinced me that I was being scammed, but when I finally did realize it, I felt physically ill, and so on, stupid and embarrassed. I had fallen in love with a photograph. My heart was broken, but worse, I found out that my liver was getting worse and I needed a transplant as I was diagnosed with a fatty liver non-alcohol related disease. But I wanted one right then and there. I even told him about it in the early on part of our relationship. He said, "Don't worry, I'll pay for it." And I thought, with my money? He says he is still at sea, going to be arrested any day now for not completing the contract, and his daughter isn't speaking to him because she needs her fees paid. I thought it was helping him to stay in touch with his daughter, so I opened a post-paid Verizon mobile account. He offered to pay for it. I didn't realize that he could charge on my account and buy new phones for himself, and whatever he pleased. I let him pay for my bill. He wrote an electronic check. I then was notified that the check was no good and it was written on a closed account. I was mad. I called him out on that, but of course he had no idea what happened. He kept trying to get into my account by changing my password. Luckily, I had put it in place that every time my password tried to be changed, they notified me so I could stop any unusual activity on my account. I started to block him, unblock him, and then blocked him again. The last time I unblocked him, I told him that my liver was getting worse and I needed my money to go towards my transplant, to which he replied, "If you send me $1,000 to get me home, you will get your transplant faster." Oh my God, there is no dealing with the devil or their disciple. I invested my time, feelings, my heart, and my money into this idiot. I can only pray that this man one day gets what he deserves. I'm going to do my best to keep myself healthy enough to receive my transplant while getting sick enough to get a tough balancing act indeed. Yet, it's so much easier than the emotional toll that I put on myself and less than a human being had put me through. Listen to your intuition. It will make a difference. Thank you for letting me share my story. Story number 2. I was a victim of a scam 3 years ago. I was scammed. I met this guy who said he was in the military. He was nice and sweet to me. I didn't think anything at first, but I fell madly in love with this man. I'm disabled on disability. I was very honest with him what a big mistake that was. He told me that I would have to pay for him to get out of the military to meet him at first, $1,100. He promised me that he would be there for me for my upcoming surgery. I waited for him at the airport and he never showed up. Then I got an email from his captain telling me he was shot while on his last night of patrol. I cried my eyes out. I didn't want anything bad to happen to him. This captain told me to come up with $1,500 to a military hospital close to me. The idiot me sent him the money. Then he told me he needed another $1,500 because he was going to bring the soldier to me with 2 other soldiers. It didn't end there. He said since I was sick and that we had to get married for me to receive the medical treatment from the military hospital. They sent me a message with a marriage certificate with my name and his name that we were married. And then he told me that they were flying him on a plane from Alaska to Colorado. When he arrived in Colorado, he messaged me and told me that they're on a layover, and I got really happy and excited. He stood me up again at the airport. Then, his captain messaged me that I needed to pay $750 for a state Liberty card. When I sent that to an agent, they were snowed in and they'd have to wait for the snow to clear to take off. 3 days went by, and now they wanted another $7,000 for them to take a private plane to Nevada to meet me. I don't have $7,000. He told me to try and get it. He asked me to send him iTunes cards, Steam cards, and I did until I couldn't do it anymore. I was hospitalized. I couldn't walk. I was stuck in bed. He didn't care. He wanted me to walk to the store and get him the cards, and if I didn't, he would call me names like telling me I'm a liar, and I was making him look like a fool, always. That I was the bad one, and that he made me a mother to his daughter, and he said our princess would hate me forever if I didn't get him what he wanted. He broke my heart in pieces, but what could I do? Nothing. I was out of money. I recently took down my Kick app to avoid his insults. I couldn't take it anymore. He made me cry every day. I felt confused, taking his insults day after day. If he really loved me, he wouldn't do this to me. I was blinded. Now I'm seeing God that he will love me unconditionally. Even though I feel alone, with God's help and time, I will be fine. Our final story is story number 3. I've been on dating sites for the past 3 years of being single after my last relationship who broke my heart. There were days I took a break on looking for love and focused on myself. I received a lot of Instagram requests by guys from the military, doctors, humanitarians that seemed to pop up every day. I thought nothing of it, not knowing what to expect if I accepted these requests. I thought just chatting and making friends. Few of them greeted me first, and I responded with a friendly hello. Some don't often reply, so I focused on the ones who responded often to my messages. This young and handsome military man and I would hit it off being friends. He asked me if I was married, had kids, and I told him I've never been married, nor do I have children, but I would love to one day. He told me he was once married, but his ex-wife and him had a baby girl together, but it went downhill when he found out his wife cheated on him with one of his ex-best friends while deployed to Nigeria. Mind you, I never knew much about deployment in the U.S. to West Africa, so I didn't think much of it, and was naive at the time. A month went by, and he started falling for me. I wasn't really looking to settle down at the time, as I was still enjoying my single and independent life. I told him I'm flattered, but that I was with him that I wasn't really ready to settle down. Plus, being from a different country, I'm living in Australia, and he said he was from Phoenix, Florida, deployed to Nigeria, so I felt it wouldn't work. I should have kept that feeling, but he was very persuasive to win my heart. He'd send me poems, music, audio messages telling me he loves me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. He kept telling me when he'll get home, he'll spend his life with me. I felt that unusual for someone to fall in love this quick. I was constantly rejecting his love for me, and I was still healing from a broken heart. Months went by, and I was slowly letting my guard down. He was the only one that would often respond to my messages, asking me if I was okay, if I'd eaten. We'd make jokes and flirtatious humor. It got to the point where I started to slowly let his love into my heart. When I told him, he was very happy to hear that. Around August of 2018, I was on a 2-week holiday away from Australia to celebrate my birthday in the Cook Islands. I loved traveling on my own, so I knew this was my best birthday treat for myself. I continued to contact him, and we'd chat on WhatsApp. Noticing his accent didn't quite sound like his picture, I asked him where the accent was from. He answered that his dad was, quote, a white American and his mother was Malaysian, so he got his accent from her. However, this voice and accent didn't sound much like Malaysians. It sounded more like an African man. He said he'd been deployed to Africa for years and caught up with the language and the accent. Stupidly, I believed him. Hours had passed, and we'd voice chat until midnight. I asked him for a video chat, but he says it's too dark and there's security cameras watching their every move. I continued to believe him, his reasons, so we continued chatting. It wasn't long until our flirty chats went further. We exchanged private photos, and he asked me to record and send him a private video explicitly for him. I started trusting him, and I was as well falling for him, so I felt I wanted to spice things up. Fast forward into our internet relationship, he was sharing the news that he had a limited food supply at his base, and he can't access his bank account. As I said previously, I had no knowledge of the military policies while deployed, so I thought the condition where he was at sounded rough, and it made me feel very sorry for him. Then, he asked if I have spare money to help him out. Something inside me is telling me this is odd, but being a naive, big-hearted person who helps people for a living, I was falling for this man and I wanted to help out. I sent at least $500 every 2 weeks, as I get paid every 2 weeks. After I wired the money to MoneyGram, mind you, I have never used MoneyGram or any money transfer service in my life, but he helped me out and gave me the details of an agent who picks up the money from the office and said he has a restriction as prohibited from leaving the base. I sent this man money 3 times over 2 months and felt like he was the luckiest man to find a woman as caring as me. He even tells me his military mates are jealous of our relationship. Around October, he said he will be coming home in a few weeks. I was extremely excited. Days before he said he was supposed to come home, he said he found out that he has to have an extended deployment for a longer period of time. I was upset. I told him this is not going to be easy for me to continue our relationship if he keeps extending this deployment. But he was very persuasive to keep me in his life. When he continued to ask me for money or food, I started having weird feelings in my gut telling me something was not right about this man. So I started doing my research and I Googled U.S. deployment in Nigeria. I saw there were a bit of details about U.S. only traveling to Nigeria to teach the soldiers their combat training for counterterrorism for Boko Haram and Islamic missions. But nothing said that U.S. soldiers are deployed or to be based there for anything else but to train Nigerian soldiers. I then came across YouTube channels about military romancing and scams, and I found a couple of channels on YouTube. They showed the scammers who steal photos of innocent soldiers in social media accounts, and I saw his face on it. I was shocked. I confronted him about it. He replied saying his account had been hacked and he was the real deal. I was in tears thinking this man is telling me the truth. I was so confused. Since that time, I was emotionally distant from him, but my love changed, and I was very paranoid. This mentality drained me to the point that I persuaded to convince him to tell me the truth. He eventually confessed, and he revealed his real face on video chat. I felt sick, but never showed him my reaction until we both hung up. I was extremely heartbroken, and I've just gotten over my anxiety and depression. I thought after blocking him that would be the end of it. He had a different number that he called me from days later and texted me wanting to talk to me and telling me that he still loves me. I was not in a good position to speak with anyone. Not even my friends and family knew what was going on, and the ideas were very good at hiding my expressions. It wasn't long until he was becoming aggressive and wanting me to continue paying him or he will post my private photos and video on social media and tag me. That then crossed the line and I fell into a huge panic attack. I suppressed myself to talk to anyone with the thought of feeling stupid and knowing what they will say to me and how dumb I was to fall for something like this, let alone pay him. So for weeks I kept my mouth shut. The threats and blackmailing me continued to the point that I had to do something. I went to the police station. I knew there was very little help that they can do, but at least it was a step in getting the help I needed. I confided in an officer about the incident and how distraught I was. I couldn't look up at him, making eye contact while explaining my issue without crying. I was even embarrassed to reveal that I sent the scammer money and my private photos. The officer assured me that he gets cases like this a lot, and I wasn't the only one. It was comforting, but I still felt the agitation of what the scammer did to damage my mental health. He traced the number I gave him and several email threats that I had received from the scammer. He concluded that it is definitely a scammer from Nigeria, however, there is little they can do about it, and that didn't surprise me. The officer advised me to block every contact I have with him, do not engage him at any time, and let the officers know if this continues to escalate any further. He also advised me to change my social media name, hide my face. I even changed my privacy settings from public to private. Not even the public can see my friends or family. I should have said this in the beginning of my story, but I'm now off anti-anxiety and depression medication. But when I revealed to the officer that I was suicidal, he contacted the paramedics to take me to the mental health unit. He wanted to give me a number of somebody to meet me at the hospital. I told him I don't want to tell anybody about this. The officer gave me this calming vibe that I need to be supported by somebody that I can trust and be there with me. I then gave the officer the only person I knew I can trust, the one friend who helped me accompany me to the doctor when I was experiencing emotional imbalance, and I started going on my medication. The officer contacted my friend, and she was already on her way. When I was taken by ambulance, I was still shaken up and breathing heavily. I arrived to the unit and saw my friend at the waiting lounge. I was happy she was there, but scared to look at her as I felt embarrassed and I already knew the officer revealed to her what had happened. I had a chat with a mental health worker and who advised me to see a psychologist. When I went to my doctor, I told my doctor about what happened and that I needed to up my medication. Then, I asked my doctor to refer me to a psychologist. Later, I became isolated from everyone. I felt so stupid and so naive for falling for something like this. It wasn't long until I confided in Scamming Scammers Action when I came across their YouTube account and felt reassured that I'm not alone. I never knew there were more victims out there like me recovering, sharing their stories and lifting up everyone with a positive energy through the comments. I became educated just by watching the YouTube channels and social media updates and what to look out for with scam emails, dating sites, and whatnot. A year has passed, and seeing a lot more scammers requesting to follow me on Instagram. I report and block them right away, if I don't know them. I now keep my close friends and family in my list and reject unfamiliar faces. I've moved on with my life now, occupying myself, staying busy, focused on my mental health, staying safe, and taking myself out for travel. I'm still single, but I'm still happy and no longer worried about being along with a scammer. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. It took me more than a year to feel comfortable enough to share. And we'd like to thank all three of these ladies for sharing their stories. What we don't realize a lot of times is these scammers do victimize people for their money, but they also leave emotional and mental scars on their victims. And we've had a lot of victims who've come to our inbox who have been suicidal, or we've also lost a few victims to suicide because of a scammer. So often we think about scammers just stealing the money, stealing iTunes cards, but in reality they do a lot of mental damage to a lot of great people. So thank you again for sharing your stories. If you'd like to share your story, you can find us on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action. You can remain anonymous and we will put your story into a video. Again, if you need help, you can find us on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action and our YouTube channel Scamming Scammers. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and as always, we're here for you anytime. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.